All right, get ready to dive into a place so big, it's kind of hard to imagine Sumatra, sixth largest island on Earth. We're talking fascinating facts, wild history like seriously unbelievable, and why this one island matters to the whole world. We're going deep with Wikipedia today, so buckle up.
Oh, I love a good Wikipedia deep dive, especially about somewhere like Sumatra. Vibrant isn't even the half of it.
This place is full of surprises. I bet you didn't know the largest flower on the planet, Rafflesia arnaldia, calls Sumatra home. We're talking like dining room table-size flower.
It's true, but that's not even the wildest thing. Sumatra's also got this volcano. 74,000 years ago, it basically caused a global volcanic winter. Talk about impact.
No way. Seriously. A supervolcano A&D, a giant flower. This place is like something out of a movie. Where do you even start with a place this incredible?
Well, you got to understand the geography. Sumatra's right in the middle of these ancient trade routes, so it's always been this crossroads. Cultures, economics, everything. Imagine like an ancient city, bustling, ships packed with silks, spices, stories from all over, all coming to this one island.
Okay, that's a pretty vivid picture. No wonder they used to call it the Island of Gold. Speaking of which, the article says the name Sumatra pops up around 1017. What was happening back then?
Ooh, this is where it gets good. 1017, that's the rise of the Srivijaya Empire. They were a maritime empire, controlled trade through the Strait of Malacca for centuries. Think Roman Empire, but on the sea, that was them. Powerful.
They ruled the waves, but, like all empires, eventually their time came to an end, right?
Exactly. And as Srivijaya faded, a new force arrived, Islam. Gradually, the whole religious landscape of Sumatra starts to shift, adds another layer to, the already incredible cultural mix.
And then comes the part that gets me excited, the 16th century. Aceh, in northern Sumatra, becomes the place for pepper. They were giving the Portuguese a run for their money.
Ah, the spice trade. It's amazing how one little thing, peppercorns, could completely reshape global trade. Who had the power? And Ace was right in the thick of it. Merchants, sailors, you can practically smell the pepper in the air.
I bet. The shouts, the ships, the whole scene must have been incredible.
Yeah.
But this was where things get a little darker, right? Dutch colonialism comes into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the Sumatran kingdoms then?
Yeah, this is a part of history that's, sadly, we've seen it in a lot of places. Dutch East India Company, they get wind of all those spices, the money to be made. 17th century they arrive, and, centuries of colonial rule follow.
A familiar story, but no less tragic for that.
Is there?
What about Ace? They were a force to be reckoned with. Did they just give in?
Not without a fight, that's for sure. And that brings us to a defining moment, the Ace War. 30 years, 1873 to 1903, a fight for their independence.
30 years? That's incredible. I have a feeling this wasn't just a minor uprising.
Not at all. The Aesanese people, they resisted fiercely. So resilient, so determined, fighting for their homes, their culture, their whole way of life. It showed just how strong they were, how deeply they were connected to their land.
The Ace War. 30 years fighting for their independence. It sounds like Sumatra's history has been anything but peaceful.
You could say that again. But even with all that turmoil, something amazing happened. The people, their spirit, those incredible cultures, they didn't just survive, they thrived.
Which brings us to Sumatra today, a mix of over 52 languages, all these different groups, Malays, Minangkabau, Batak, Asinese, Lampungs. The list goes on, over 52 languages. I'd be lost trying to order a coffee.
It really speaks to their history, how complex it is. Imagine like a market, but instead of just the goods being from all over, you've got languages just as diverse. Malay is kind of the common thread, helps everyone get by. But each group, they've still got their own dialects, their traditions.
It was like a linguistic melting pot, with Malay as the broth. Speaking of which, the article mentioned the Minangkabau people. They build these houses that sound like something out of a fairy tale.
There's something else. Picture this. Roofs that curd way, way up, like the front of a ship almost. But it's not just looks, the Minangkabau. They're known for being incredibly savvy with business. Natural entrepreneurs probably comes from centuries in the spice trade,
Wow. It makes you realize the spice trade, it wasn't just about the economics. It's woven into everything about Sumatra.
100%. Which brings us to another side of Sumatra we got to talk about, the environmental challenges it's facing. We've talked about the past, all this amazing stuff, but to understand Sumatra now, you got to look at some harsh realities, too.
The Wikipedia article didn't hold back. Sumatra's lost almost half its rainforest in just 35 years. That's a punch to the gut. What does that even look like, losing that much forest that fast?
Imagine a place twice the size of Ireland, completely cleared, it's devastating. And the consequences? They reach far beyond Sumatra. This affects the whole planet.
And it's not just the trees either, right? We're talking about animals we all know. Tigers, rhinos, elephants, orangutans.
Okay.
These animals are the rainforest, and they're being pushed to extinction.
Exactly. They're paying the price for this deforestation. Their homes are vanishing, and their numbers are plummeting because of it. It's tragic.
It really hit home with that Southeast Asian haze back in 2013. The article mentioned those huge forest fires, a lot of them deliberately set to clear land.
That was a wake-up call for a lot of people. That haze, all that smoke from the fires, it covered the whole region. People couldn't breathe, travel was disrupted, economies took a hit, all because of what was happening in Sumatra.
It's almost too big to think about. Something happens in the rainforest there, and people thousands of miles away are choking on the smoke. It shows how connected everything is. And it gets even more serious. The article used the word ecocide to describe what's happening in Sumatra. That's intense.
It is ecocide, basically wiping out the environment on a huge scale. People don't use that word lightly. It tells you how serious things are, and it makes us ask some tough questions about, what's our responsibility here? We're supposed to be protecting these places.
Ecocide. It's a heavy word. And it makes the future of Sumatra feel, I don't know, uncertain. We've gone from this amazing history, all that culture, to this. It's kind of overwhelming, honestly.
It means we have to do something. Sumatra's story, it's not separate from ours,
Yeah.
It's all connected, the ecosystems, the choices we make, everything. We're all part of this.
I know, but it's easy to feel like, what can one person even do? It feels so big. Then again, you think about the Ace War.
Yeah.
30 years they fought. That's got to mean something, right? That power to resist, to fight for what you believe in.
That's a good point. The Ace people, they remind us that things can change, even when it seems impossible. But you got to start somewhere, right? Learning about it, that's the first step.
So where do we go from here? This deep dive into Sumatra, it's been amazing, eye-opening, but also kind of a reality check. Can this island paradise actually be saved?
The answer is never simple, is it? But it's got to start with us changing how we do things, consuming less, supporting sustainable practices, realizing how precious these places are, how we can't get them back once they're gone. Imagine Sumatra. But the coffee you drink, it doesn't have a side of deforestation with it. Or seeing an orangutan in the wild, it's not this rare thing.
That's a future worth fighting for.
Yeah.
But it takes more than just picturing it, right?
You got it. We have to actually do something. Look into the palm oil and the products you buy. Think about where all this stuff comes from, how much we consume. And then use your voice. The people in Sumatra, those fighting to protect their homes, the environment, they need our support.
You've definitely given us a lot to think about today, this deep dive. It's been inspiring, but also, like you said, a call to action.
Because what's knowledge if you don't do anything with it? It's like a seed just sitting there. It needs to be planted, nurtured to actually grow.
So to everyone listening, Sumatra's story isn't over yet. What happens next? It's up to all of us. What will your part be?
Welcome to our deep dive. We're taking on string theory today, using those Wikipedia excerpts you sent.
Really fascinating stuff, trying to break it all down.
Yeah, no easy feat. So, string theory. It's like, what if the universe isn't made of tiny point-like particles?
Right, not little billiard balls, but something weirder.
Exactly. What if it's all these incredibly small vibrating strings instead?
And those vibrations, that's what creates everything, all the particles we know.
Okay, hold on. How small are we talking here? I mean, smaller than an atom.
Way smaller.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. If an atom were the size of the entire observable universe,
Whoa, okay, that's big.
one of these strings would be about as big as a tree.
So it's like everything we see, everything around us, it's all just different vibrations of these tiny strings.
That's the idea. Electrons, quarks, all the fundamental particles,
Yeah.
just different string vibes.
And what about gravity? That's always been a tough one to fit in with the other forces.
That's where it gets really interesting. String theory actually predicts the graviton.
The graviton, that's the hypothetical particle responsible for gravity, right?
Exactly. It pops right out of the math. Just another type of string vibration.
Huh. So instead of universe built from Lego blocks, it's more like an orchestra, with strings playing all the different notes of reality.
I like that. A cosmic symphony.
But there's got to be more to it, right? I mean, it can't be that simple.
Oh, there's definitely more. Here's where it gets really mind-bending. String theory only really works if we have more than just the 3 dimensions we experience every day.
More dimensions, you mean like up, down, left, right, forward, back?
Exactly, those are our usual three. But string theory says there need to be extra spatial dimensions, curled up really tiny so we don't notice them.
Okay, I think I've heard of this before. It's like, imagine a garden hose, right?
Yeah, good analogy.
From far away, it looks like a one-dimensional line, but up close, you see it has a circumference, another dimension.
Precisely. So these extra dimensions are curled up just like that, hidden from our everyday experience.
Okay, I sort of get the analogy, but why? Why do we even need these extra dimensions in the first place?
Well, simply put, the math of string theory just doesn't add up without them. They're essential for making the theory consistent.
Huh. Okay, so it's not just for fun. These extra dimensions are doing some heavy lifting behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it gets even wilder. These extra dimensions, they're not just floating around randomly. They're thought to be compactified into these really complex, multidimensional shapes.
And those are Pabian manifolds.
Pao-Yao, say that one more time.
Calabi-Yau manifolds, they're six-dimensional shapes, and they're super important because they actually determine how the strings can vibrate.
Wait, so these Calabi-Yao things, they're like shaping the very fabric of reality? That's a lot to take in.
It is. Each possible Calabi-Yau manifold could lead to a different set of particles and forces, a different universe, essentially. So we've got these incredibly tiny strings vibrating in all these crazy dimensions, all curled up into these Calabi-Yau shapes. This is definitely some next-level physics. So we've got these tiny strings, extra dimensions, Calabi-Yau manifolds. It's a lot. But where does it all lead? What's the ultimate goal of string theory?
It's not just about explaining particles and forces. It's about finding one elegant framework that explains everything.
Everything, like a theory of everything.
Exactly. And that's where M-theory comes in.
M-theory. That's another level up.
You could say that. It tries to bring all the different versions of string theory together under one umbrella.
Wait, there are different versions?
There are 5 consistent superstring theories, each with its own way of describing things. But M-theory says they're all just different perspectives on the same underlying theory. Imagine looking at, say, a sculpture.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
From different angles, you see different shapes, but it's all the same sculpture, right? M-theory is like that, suggesting a higher dimensional framework where these string theories all fit together.
Okay, I get it. So M-theory is trying to be the ultimate theory, unifying all those different versions.
Precisely. And it's not just a random idea. It actually arises quite naturally from string theory when you start exploring its mathematical structure. It suggests that we need 11 dimensions in total for everything to work out.
11 dimensions. My brain hurts just thinking about it. But who came up with this M-theory idea in the first place?
That would be Edward Witten, a brilliant physicist. Back in the mid-90s, he proposed M-theory, and it really shook things up in the physics world.
I bet. Trying to unify all of physics, it's a pretty bold move. But what about things like black holes? Can string theory shed any light on those cosmic enigmas?
Black holes are definitely a great testing ground for any theory of quantum gravity.
And what does string theory have to say about them?
Well, for one, it offers a possible explanation for black hole entropy.
Entropy, isn't that like a measure of disorder? What does that have to do with black holes?
You're right, entropy is about disorder, or more precisely, the number of ways you can arrange the microscopic parts of a system without changing its overall appearance.
Okay, so how does that relate to a black hole?
Black holes are incredibly strange objects. They have a huge amount of entropy, but it's not proportional to their volume like you might expect. It's actually proportional to the surface area of their event horizon.
The event horizon, that's the point of no return, right? Once you cross it, you're trapped inside the black hole forever.
That's the one. And it turns out this relationship between entropy and surface area is captured by a formula called the Bekenstein-Hawking formula. But for a long time, no one could figure out why black holes had this weird entropy property.
And string theory provided an explanation.
Exactly. 2 physicists, Andrew Strominger and Kamran Vafa, used string theory to actually derive the Bekenstein-Hawking formula.
Wow, so they figured out why this formula works, why black holes have the entropy they do. How did they do that?
They use objects called D-branes, which are kind of like surfaces that strings can attach to. They showed that a system of D-branes, when viewed from afar, can look exactly like a black hole.
Okay, so they're saying black holes are like illusions created by these D-branes?
In a way, yes. But the really mind-blowing thing was that when they calculated the entropy of those D-branes, it perfectly matched the Bekenstein-Hawking formula.
So they explained a real property of black holes using these theoretical D-branes from string theory. That's pretty amazing.
It was a major victory for string theory, suggesting it could be on the right track to understanding quantum gravity.
So string theory seems to have something to say about these mysterious black holes, but there's still the issue of information, right?
Ah, you're talking about the black hole information paradox.
Yeah, that's the one where Stephen Hawking said black holes radiate energy and eventually evaporate. But doesn't that mean information gets destroyed in the process?
Exactly. And that's a big no-no in quantum mechanics, which says information cannot be destroyed. It's like burning a book. The information in the book should still exist in some form, even if the book itself is gone.
So how does string theory solve this paradox?
Well, there's a mind-bending concept called the ADS-CFT correspondence, which offers a possible solution.
ADS-CFT. Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
Basically, it suggests that string theory, when formulated in a particular space-time called anti-de Sitter space, or ADS, could be mathematically equivalent or dual to a completely different type of theory, a conformal field theory, or CFT, living on the boundary of that space-time.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. That sounds incredibly complicated. So you're saying a theory of gravity in one space is the same as a non-gravitational theory in another space. How does that even work?
It's like a hologram, where you have a 2D surface, but encoded within it is all the information of a 3D image.
Okay, that analogy helps a little. But I still don't see how this relates to the black hole information paradox.
Think of it this way. If you have a black hole in this ADS space-time, the information about what falls into the black hole isn't really lost. Instead, it's encoded on the boundary of that space-time where the CFT lives.
So it's like the information gets transferred and stored elsewhere rather than being destroyed.
Precisely. This idea, while still very theoretical, suggests a possible way out of the information paradox, further strengthening the case for string theory as a possible framework for understanding quantum gravity.
Okay, we've gone through a lot. These tiny strings, hidden dimensions, black holes, even holograms. It's mind-blowing stuff, but it's also, like, really theoretical. How do we actually test any of this? These strings are supposed to be way too small to see with any technology we have, right?
That's true. One of the biggest challenges for string theory is experimental verification.
So we're stuck with this, like, beautiful theory that we can't actually prove or disprove.
Well, not necessarily. Directly observing strings might be out of reach for now, but physicists are exploring other ways to connect string theory to observable phenomena.
Okay, like what? Give me some hope here.
For example, string theory might have played a role in cosmic inflation, that period of rapid expansion in the very early universe.
Inflation right after the Big Bang.
Exactly. Some string theory models suggest that specific types of string interactions could have driven that inflationary period.
So by studying the remnants of the Big Bang, like that cosmic microwave background radiation, we might be able to find traces of these stringy effects, even if we can't see the strings themselves.
Exactly. It's like looking for clues in the cosmic fossil record.
I like it. So what else? What other mysteries could string theory help us solve?
Well, there's the question of why the universe seems so fine-tuned for life as we know it.
You mean like the values of the fundamental constants? How they're all just right for stars and planets to form?
Exactly. If those constants were even slightly different, the universe would be a very different place, probably not suitable for life.
So is string theory saying there's a reason those constants are what they are? That it's not just random chance?
One idea that's emerged is the landscape concept, suggesting our universe might just be one of many, many universes, each with its own set of physical laws and constants.
A multiverse. So, like, we just happen to live in the universe where things worked out for us.
In a way, yes. This landscape arises because those extra dimensions in string theory can be compactified in a huge number of ways.
Ah, those Calabi-Yau shapes again.
Exactly. Each way of compactifying the extra dimensions could lead to a different universe with its own unique properties.
But if there are so many possibilities, how can we ever make specific predictions about our universe? It seems like a recipe for never knowing anything, for sure.
That's a valid concern. The landscape problem is a big challenge for string theory, making it difficult to test and make precise predictions about our own universe.
So where does that leave us? It sounds like we've hit a bit of a dead end.
Not at all. While string theory's role in explaining our physical universe is still being debated, it's had a surprising impact on another field, pure mathematics.
Really? Math? I wouldn't have expected that. How so?
Well, for one, string theory led to the discovery of something called mirror symmetry.
Mirror symmetry, that sounds intriguing.
It's a mathematical duality that connects seemingly different geometric shapes called Calabi-Yau manifolds in a way that helps mathematicians solve complex problems. It's like finding a secret passageway between two different areas of math.
So string theory is providing new tools and insights for mathematicians. That's pretty cool.
It is, and it goes even further. There's a fascinating story called Monstrous Moonshine, which connects string theory to a massive mathematical object called the monster group and something called the J function.
The monster group.
Ah,
That sounds intense.
It is. It's the largest sporadic finite simple group, and it pops up unexpectedly in both string theory and this completely separate area of mathematics. It's an amazing example of how string theory can reveal deep connections between seemingly unrelated fields.
So string theory, it's this like bridge between abstract mathematical concepts and the real world, maybe even other worlds, if the multiverse idea is true.
It really makes you question the nature of reality, doesn't it?
It does. It's fascinating, a little frustrating that it's so hard to pin down experimentally, but still utterly mind-blowing. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into string theory, from those tiny vibrating strings to the vast landscape of possible universes, black holes, and even the fundamental laws of physics.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
True. And it's clear that even if string theory isn't the final answer, it's opened up new ways of thinking about the universe and our place in it. It leaves us with more questions than answers, but those questions are, themselves, a source of wonder and inspiration.
Absolutely. And who knows what breakthroughs await us in the future. The journey of scientific discovery is just as important as the destination.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the mind-blowing world of string theory.
All right, so today we're diving deep into Legends of Africa. We've got excerpts from the Wikipedia article, and it's packed with stories that are way more exciting than your average history book.
Oh, you're in for a treat. We're talking about military geniuses, empires, ancient myths, powerful queens, all these amazing figures from African history.
It's like opening up a history book, but instead of being boring, it's like an action movie or something. So where do we even start with all this?
Well, you mentioned military geniuses, right? Let's start with a king who took on not one, but T2O of the biggest world powers at the time.
Okay, now that's a story. Who are we talking about?
King Sekukune, the leader of the Maritime people.
Sekukune, all right. Taking on the big guys. Tell me more. This sounds interesting.
So imagine being so good at warfare, so smart in your strategies, that you managed to hold your own against both the Boers, those tough South African fighters, and the British Empire in the late 1800s.
Wow, he wasn't messing around.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like small fights either. We're talking full-blown conflicts. And get this, at the same time, he was also dealing with wars against the Swazi people.
This Sekukune guy, he sounds like he had a lot of enemies. But he must have been doing something right to handle all that.
Oh, he was a master. Sekukune, he knew the land like the back of his hand, used guerrilla tactics that confused his enemies. The guy was resilient, even when he was finally defeated and it took the British and the Swazi warriors teaming up to do it. He was so respected that the London Times, they published a whole tribute to him.
Hold on, are you serious? The London Times, the famous British newspaper, they honored an African king they were at war with. That's crazy.
It just shows you the respect he had, even from the people he was fighting. Even in the middle of all that conflict, people recognized his greatness.
Wow. Okay, so we've got one military genius down, but our deep dive mentioned another Shaka Zulu. He's super famous, right?
Absolutely. When you think of military innovation, you think of Shaka Zulu. Imagine turning a small tribe into this powerful force that changed everything in southern Africa. That's what he did.
So we're talking about the Zulu kingdom we all know today. How did he do it?
Visionary leader, pure and simple. Revolutionized Zulu warfare. He introduced new weapons like the assegai, a short spear for close combat. Can you imagine being on the other side of that thing? He also reorganized the army based on age, which made them incredibly disciplined and loyal.
It's amazing how those changes not only helped them win battles, but also create a strong sense of identity for the Zulu people.
Exactly. Uniting the Zulu people, that's his biggest legacy. He didn't just win battles, he shaped a whole culture.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so we've talked about military leaders. What about empires built on trade, knowledge, that kind of thing? I think our outline mentioned the Oyo Empire.
Oh yeah, the Oyo Empire. They were a force to be reckoned with. Picture this. a huge empire in what's now Nigeria, thriving for centuries because of their perfect location and their skill in trade.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Bustling markets, camels carrying goods. Set the scene for me. What were they trading?
They were at the crossroads of the world, perfectly placed to take advantage of all the trade routes. They had the trans-Saharan roads, bringing in gold and salt from the north, and then the coastal trade with Europeans, which opened up even more opportunities.
Wow, they were bridging continents.
Exactly. Unfortunately, part of their trade was enslaved people, a dark side to their success, for sure. But they also traded ivory, beautiful textiles, and all sorts of valuable resources. All that trade meant a lot of wealth and power for the Oyo Empire.
Makes sense. Control the trade, control the wealth. But they weren't just about trade, were they? Didn't they also have a pretty strong military?
You're right. They were known for their cavalry, the Eso Ikoi. These warriors were incredibly powerful, crucial in expanding the empire's influence over other kingdoms. They were a big part of what made the Oyo Empire so dominant.
Strategic trade, powerful military. What about their culture? Anything interesting there?
Oh, now we're getting to the good stuff. Have you ever heard of Shango?
Shango. It rings a bell, but I can't quite place it. Refresh my memory.
He was the third king of the Oyo Empire. He's legendary, shrouded in myth. People believe he brought about this golden age for his people. But here's the really interesting part. After his death, Shango became a god.
Wait, seriously. From a king to an actual god. Tell me more.
It's true. He's worshipped as the god of thunder and lightning. It shows how powerful he was and the impact he had on the Yoruba people. And it gets even more interesting. His worship spread way beyond the Oyo Empire. You can find people who worship Shango all over Africa, even in the Americas. That's quite a legacy for one king.
That's incredible. From a king to a god worshipped across continents. It's amazing how some historical figures become almost mythical.
Speaking of mythical figures, let's switch gears for a second and talk about Askia the Great of the Songhai Empire, another leader who left his mark on history.
Askia the Great, okay? I'm already getting powerful emperor vibes from that name. Tell me everything.
Askia the Great, he was more than just a conqueror. He was a visionary. He knew that real power comes from knowledge, not just brute strength. And under his rule, the Songhai Empire flourished, reaching its peak. And the heart of this empire was the legendary city of Timbuktu.
Timbuktu. It's like a synonym for mystery and lost knowledge. I've always wanted to know more about it.
Who hasn't? Under Askia's rule, Timbuktu became this incredible center of learning and trade, a beacon that attracted scholars from all over the Islamic world.
So we're talking about a global center of knowledge centuries ago. What was it like? Paint me a picture.
Imagine this. Markets overflowing with exotic goods from all over the world. The sounds of intellectuals debating in the streets. Libraries full of ancient manuscripts on astronomy, math, Islamic law, medicine, you name it. Timbuktu was like a melting pot of different cultures and ideas.
It sounds like something straight out of Indiana Jones. This lost city of knowledge, hidden in the desert sands.
It's true. And it's all thanks to leaders like Askia the Great, who understood that a great empire needed more than just a strong military. They needed a strong economy and intellectual centers like Timbuktu to leave a lasting impact.
It makes you wonder what other amazing discoveries are still waiting out there.
Right. Speaking of legacies, let's head back to West Africa and talk about King Jaja of Apobo. His story, his rise to power, is really something else.
Okay, King Jaja of Apobo. I'm intrigued. What's his story?
Unlike some of the rulers we've discussed who were born into royalty, King Jaja's story is one of incredible resilience. He was actually sold into slavery as a young boy.
Wow, really? From slavery to becoming a king. That's unbelievable.
Talk about beating the odds. Through his intelligence, his business skills, and his knack for politics, King Jaja rose up and became one of the most influential figures in the Niger Delta region.
That's amazing. How did he go from being enslaved to such a powerful leader?
He eventually became the head of the Anapupple House. Imagine, King Jaja, once enslaved, now leading one of the most powerful trading houses in Bonny, controlling the palm oil trade.
Palm oil, that was a big deal back then, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the slave trade ending and all.
Right. And King Jaja, smart as he was, decided he wasn't going to play by the rules set by those European middlemen. He started shipping palm oil directly to Liverpool.
Wow, cutting out the middleman. Controlling the whole process. That's some serious business strategy.
It was a bold move. And to have even more control, he established his own independent state, Apobo. This guy was a real trailblazer.
I bet that didn't sit well with everyone, especially the Europeans used to be in charge. You're telling me, going independent like that, King Jaja must have really upset some people, especially the British. They were all about expanding their empire back then.
Exactly. The British, they saw this independent streak as a threat. Here they were trying to build their colonial empire, and King Jaja has the guts to create his own state, control the trade they wanted. No way they were going to let that stand.
So what did they do? I can't imagine they just gave up.
Oh, they had a plan. They tricked King Jaja, lured him onto one of their ships, accused him of breaking treaties, and shipped him off to exile in the West Indies.
Wow, that's harsh. It's really sad how these colonial powers just came in and dismantled successful African kingdoms. It makes you think how different things would be if they hadn't interfered.
It really does.
Yeah.
But King Jaja's story, even though it ends sadly, it's a powerful example of African resilience. This was a man who overcame incredible obstacles, rose to power, and then challenged the very forces trying to exploit his people.
He's a true symbol of resistance. His story deserves to be remembered, celebrated.
Absolutely. Speaking of stories that deserve to be told, let's shift gears a little. We talked about the Ghana Empire earlier, one of the earliest empires in West Africa.
Right. Famous for its gold. Ghana, gold, it just makes sense.
And here's a cool connection. The Ashanti people, who are still prominent in Ghana today, they have a direct link to this ancient empire. They trace their ancestry back to people who left the Ghana Empire when it declined.
So even though the empire itself didn't last, its influence continued through groups like the Ashanti.
Exactly. And you can see that legacy in their culture, their traditions, their ceremonies, even the way they structure their own kingdom, the Ashanti Confederacy.
It's fascinating how these echoes from the past can resonate for so long. Empires might disappear, but their culture lives on.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about ancient connections, let's go to a place full of myth and legend, Isle Ife. This place is believed to be the birthplace of the Yoruba people.
Isle Ife. Sounds mysterious. It's a sacred city for them, right? Like their Mecca.
Exactly. For the Yoruba people, Isle Ife is where their civilization began. It's where their creation myth takes place.
Okay, we have to talk about this creation myth. Who are the main characters? Who's their Adam and Eve?
In the Yoruba creation myth, everything revolves around a figure named Oduduwa. He's the one who brought the Yoruba people into existence.
So Oduduwa is like their ultimate ancestor.
You could say that. There are different versions of the story. Some say Oduduwa was sent from the heavens. Others say he was a powerful king who migrated to the region. But no matter what version you hear, one thing's for sure. Oduduwa is incredibly important to the Yoruba people. He's their ancestor, their cultural hero.
It's amazing how origin stories like this can really shape people's identities, bring them together over generations.
They're powerful. And speaking of powerful, we can't forget about the amazing women who shaped African history. The queens who ruled with strength, intelligence, and total dedication to their people.
Absolutely. We can't talk about African legends and leave out the queens. Our outline mentioned two in particular, Queen Amina of Zaria and Queen Nzinga of Ndongo. Let's start with Queen Amina. I always picture her as this fierce warrior queen.
You're not wrong. Queen Amina of Zaria, that's in modern-day Nigeria, she was known for her military skills and her ambition. She expanded Zaria's influence, that's for sure. She wasn't afraid to use her power to make her kingdom prosperous.
She wasn't just about brute force.
Right.
I think our notes mentioned something about her building some impressive defenses. Tell me more.
Ah, yes, Queen Amina's walls. She was way ahead of her time when it came to defense. Imagine these huge earthen walls surrounding her cities. They were meant to intimidate enemies and keep them out. These walls, they set the standard. Other house estates copied her designs.
From military leader to city planner, this woman was amazing.
She was. Now, let's go to 17th century Angola. Let's talk about Queen Nzinga of Ndongo. She's known for her resistance against European colonialism.
Now, she had a tough job. This is during the age of exploration, going up against the full might of the Portuguese Empire.
Exactly. And Queen Nzinga, she did not back down. She was a brilliant strategist, a fearless leader. She fought so hard to protect her people from the Portuguese.
So how did she do it? How do you stand up to an empire like that?
Queen Nzinga was a master of diplomacy and military strategy. At one point, she even formed an alliance with the Dutch. She played the Europeans against each other to protect her own interests.
That's incredible. She outsmarted them. What a legend.
Right. And it wasn't just her political skills that made her remarkable. Queen Nzinga challenged all the gender norms of her time. She insisted on being called king, she dressed in male clothing, and she personally led her armies into battle.
Now that's what I call leading by example. She wasn't just giving orders, she was right there on the front lines, fighting alongside her people.
She was a true force. Her story shows how complex this era was, the fight for power, the clash of cultures, and the incredible individuals who rose to meet those challenges.
It's like we're seeing a tapestry of resilience, strategic brilliance, and this unwavering determination to protect their culture, their way of life.
Exactly. And all these stories, from Shaka Zulu's military genius to the Oyo Empire's mastery of trade, the incredible resistance of King Jaja and Queen Nzinga, they all come together to paint this vivid picture of Africa's past.
It's amazing to think there's so much more to learn beyond what they tell you in school. This deep dive has been eye-opening.
It really has, and we've only scratched the surface. It reminds you that history isn't just dates and names in a textbook. It's about real people, their struggles, their victories, and the legacy they leave behind.
Speaking of legacies, we haven't talked about the Ajuran Sultanate yet. They were in our notes, and I'm curious to learn more. Were they around the same time as these other empires?
Oh yeah, the Ajuran Sultanate, they were a major power from like the 13th to the 17th centuries, so right in the thick of it, when these other empires were flourishing. They were masters of trade and naval power, dominated the Indian Ocean for centuries.
Wow, they were practically neighbors with the empires we discussed. It really shows how connected everything was back then. What was their secret? What made them so successful?
They were incredibly innovative, especially when it came to farming and water. Developed these really advanced irrigation systems and terraced farming techniques, which allowed them to thrive even in a region prone to droughts.
So they weren't just surviving, they were thriving.
Right. And that mastery over agriculture, along with their strategic location on the coast, allowed them to control these vital trade routes in the Indian Ocean. They became a major player in the whole network.
So what were they trading across the Indian Ocean?
We're talking high-value stuff. Ivory, textiles, gold, even those exotic spices everyone wanted. They connected Africa to the Middle East, India, even as far as China. It was a bustling trade network that brought a ton of wealth and influence to their ports.
It's fascinating to imagine this interconnected world all those centuries ago, with the Ajuran Sultanate right in the middle of it.
It shows that Africa has always been this hub of innovation, trade, and cultural exchange, shaping world history in ways we're still uncovering. And these stories we've talked about, they're just a small taste of that, just a glimpse into this vast, fascinating history.
It really makes you want to keep learning.
Absolutely.
So to our listeners, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows what incredible stories you'll uncover next.